Welcome to the Liberalish podcast, brought to you by What You Expect. I'm your host, Marcus, and you'll be hearing from my co-hosts, Keith and Carly, in a bit. But be sure to check us out at whatyouexpect.com. That's wyexpect.com. Wherever you're hearing this, whether it's on Spotify, Apple, I'm sure you might be seeing this on YouTube. Hopefully you are. That's why I'm doing this. Be sure to rate us, subscribe to us, talk to us. We love to shoot the shit. But yeah, just be sure to check us out. It goes a long way to kind of keeping the show going. Any sort of feedback would be great. This week we had our CEO, really our talisman, kind of the engine that keeps us going. The Lionel Messi of the What You Expect enterprise, Dwa. He came onto the show to discuss Donald Trump's oft-repeated claim that he has done more for black people than any other president, which sounds bizarre. And Dwa really dug into it in an article that he wrote for the site this week that you should definitely go check out. But as crazy as it sounds that, he may have done more, we have to actually entertain the possibility. If you look back at American history, this is a country that was founded, under racist pretense. Racism has been here since the inception of this country. So, despite the fact that he stoked racial resentment for the better part of the last decade in the political realm, and even prior to that, ran his businesses in a way where racism was ever present, whether it was the way that he dealt with employees, whether the way he dealt with people going to his casinos, even tenants in Queens. He does have, there's a history there. You look at his mentors, whether it's Roger Stone or Roy Cohn or his father. It's hard to say that he's not racist, and yet, if we're going to frame the conversation this way, that who's done the most for black people, he's there. So we tackled that, and I thought it was a really good discussion that we had, and a few other things that we touched on prior to digging into the Trump question, like the continuing SARS protests in Nigeria and the challenges that I know I have, and I'm sure other people have, in kind of showing their solidarity and support for black people globally. There are some new developments in the Breonna Taylor case this week, including now there are charges, and it looks fair charges, or not charges, I should say in the legal sense, just allegations would probably be the better term, for Kentucky AG Daniel Cameron. There was also the tragic murder of Walter Wallace Jr. by the Philadelphia Police Department earlier this week. It's kind of kicked off a round of protests, riots, and conflict with the police that they just seem incapable of de-escalating. I do wonder what we're training them to do. It seems like they're really good at attacking citizens and protecting property, but you would hope that they would be protecting citizens. But same shit, different day as far as that goes. There were a few other topics that we touched on. What white people vote for, can they vote against their own self-interests? Which I think if you don't pay attention to politics, it's something that maybe you don't realize they do all the time. So it was good to kind of dig into that. We talked about whether black people potentially should arm up and exercise their Second Amendment rights, and a few more items, which you throw in kind of before the wheel. The conversation can kind of go in any number of directions, and it did, but I still think it was a good show that you'll enjoy. And before I kind of hand it off to them, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't encourage anyone listening to this, watching this, to go out and vote if you haven't already. It's very encouraging to see. I think 86 million people have already gone to vote, which puts us on pace. We'll see what the election day turnout looks like, but the turnout numbers looking incredible, and hopefully the momentum continues. I know there are a lot of people that are jaded or disaffected, disengaged from the politics. They either hate it, or they just don't believe that the system works for them and people like them. It's part of the reason that someone like Donald Trump was able to kind of rise up, and also to a lesser extent kind of fed into kind of Bernie Sanders' rise. And I totally get that. It's hard. It's hard for me to kind of, and you'll hear later on, but it's kind of hard for me to kind of deal with the idea that, or entertain the idea that people are, just don't believe in the system, and they just take themselves out of it rather than fighting back or fighting to have their voice heard. And it's something that really happens, and I can't argue with it really. It's just hard for me to kind of empathize, but I totally get. I can understand where it comes from, but at the end of the day, I do think that people need to make sure that their voices are heard. We're a better country when more people vote, more people are involved and engaged in what's happening here. So, if you care about your communities, you care about the people around you. Um, you want to see, your cities, your states, your country at large represents and uphold things that you believe in. Go out and vote. Tuesday, November 3rd. Go out and do it. Without further ado, though, here's episode 8 of the Liberalish podcast.
All right. So I wanted to start the podcast off with kind of some on an adult note, basically. So I wanted to move our Back to Blue section up to the top. I just wanted to say, first off, thoughts and prayers out to the protesters out in Nigeria protesting against the SARS. That's like the Special NTA Robbery Squad. Just recently, it's been reported that the military in Nigeria opened fire on the citizens while they're peacefully protesting. So it seems like the situation's taking a turn for the worse there. It seems like the government's not really doing much for the people there.
I think this has been going on for about 2 weeks now, right? These protests.
Yeah, something like that. It's been going on for a little bit, and it seems like the government really hasn't been moving the needle much. They've just been using U.S. tactics, right? Just trying to wait it out, very soft reforms.
Well, I do think I do believe that they did come out and say that they are going to end SARS. But I don't think anything's happened kind of in the interim. They kind of came out and pledged to end SARS and reform the police. But one, it's not the first time that they've made this promise. I think they've had other issues in the past where the government's had heavy-handed responses to response to protests or even just police corruption. But two, it doesn't seem like, despite the fact that they've made this pledge, it hasn't stopped, people from going out and protesting because, again, this is the fact that SARS police, the government in general has kind of been able to, act the way that they've acted for so long. I think people are just tired and they're still going to they want to see something done before they just stop demanding change from the government. They actually want to see substantive things happen. Which is not uncommon to us as we've seen here in the States. But yeah, it's crazy that it's gone on for 2 weeks and it doesn't seem like there's any slowdown in these people's fight.
No, not at all. And you kind of brought up a good point, right? The calls to end SARS has happened before in the past. The government really hasn't moved the needle much on that. That sounds like something that happened here in the U.S., right? Hey, we're going to do police reform. Congress hasn't really acted. I don't think many states have even enacted any police reform legislations at all. So,
yeah, there's a lot of symbolic gestures done. I think a couple of states they've debated it, but I think one, it's kind of hard they're going to say that it's hard to do anything with COVID in effect, and it's kind of keeping them from gathering and really kind of debating these issues in a meaningful way and kind of coming to some sort of, again, substantive change for those communities. But still, I got in Minnesota, I think the city where George Floyd died, they had come together and said that we're going to tackle this issue, and it turns out months later that it's kind of fallen by the wayside. They haven't really come through on their promise. So yeah, again, this is kind of par for the course, I would say, and people are kind of saying that they want to do, the government's saying that they want to come out and do the right thing and they want to kind of respond to the justice, but then in terms of actually seeing it through, I think that's why people are still protesting, because they actually want to see change before they just kind of let up, and kind of let the work happen, so to speak.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I wish that kind of happened here a little bit more too. We kind of dispersed into the protests over the calls for police reform, and nothing happened.
Yeah,
absolutely nothing happened. So we'll see about that. So talking about the good old days, the Kentucky AG's office and one of the murderers that killed Breonna Taylor, they're fighting to keep the investigative materials from the public. So their argument is that they want a fair trial for the one cop that was charged for one-ton endangerment. Basically, he was charged for missing Breonna Taylor, essentially.
Yep.
So basically, they are trying to uphold the evidence, they're trying to protect their fellow cops. The argument against that is, well, you already came out and did a press conference about the charges and what the evidence was. Why not release it out to the public? What are you trying to hide from us? Is there more incriminating evidence out there, that could charge up the other officers, for instance?
I think one of like I was saying, one of my biggest things is I think by now people have already started to kind of especially I think people are still kind of outraged that he wasn't charged with more, but I think people are more aware that there's definitely something being kept from like the public. I think most people have already come to that conclusion, like there's more to the story. I think the frustrating part is that we know there's more to the story and they know there's more to the story, but like it's almost as if another like slap in the face, like we don't care how you feel. We don't care about these protests. We don't care that you're upset. We don't care that you're mad or outraged. Like this is all you're going to get. And I think even like people who were in the jury were like they didn't even know that there was like they weren't even presented with the option of charging him with more. They had only brought this one thing to them as like if you're going to indict him or not. And even in his press conference following, he said he had all the information and he felt that he did the best he could with the information. He reviewed the information. And for me, that translate like we know the full story, but this is like all that we're going to hold him accountable for, because we have to hold him accountable because you guys keep protesting. So this is all we're going to hold him accountable for, to say that we did something, but that's about it. Like you're not getting any more from us on that perspective. So I feel like I think like if you really break it down, that's like where everyone is at this point. Like it's kind of like you're trying to push somebody to do something, but like when has anything that we've ever done to try to get somebody to do something like really ever worked?
That's a very good question.
In terms of like, are you asking basically if protests work?
Not even that, but I'm like that, yes. But also like when has like I guess public scrutiny or like public outrage from the Black community ever really propelled like someone to getting in trouble? Like we were upset about Trayvon Martin, we were upset about Philando Castile, we were upset about Mike Brown. We protested all these things. We went on, we did interviews
George Floyd
and everything, and exactly. And I feel like it's really like a joke amongst like legislation and like and lawyers and attorney generals. I think it's like it's a joke. It's like these people are upset about this thing, and we indicted him for something. Why can't y'all be happy about it? Like what else do you want?
I think how you touched on it being a joke, I think the reason why it's a joke is because we eventually stop protesting. Like exactly. we should honestly still be protesting, because it's like why did it stop? Like one day we were just like, all right, I remember it was like 3 weeks straight for the George Floyd thing. Like it's like, oh, there's a protest here, there's a protest there. But it's like if you're gonna stop, it's like, all right, there's something else to be mad about later. And I think that's just their game plan. Like they'll forget.
And what's funny about that is you now have more of a reason to protest. Like it was just George Floyd at first, and then it was Breonna Taylor, and then it was
Ahmaud Arbery was before, actually, I think.
Yeah. So it was like all these like things that happened. And so I thought the outrage would grow, and I feel like it has, but I think naturally people get discouraged because how long do you spend in the streets protesting before you see, like, when is the right time to stop protesting? Like when do you stop protesting, or when do you up the ante, or when do you calm down? Like I feel like we get crumbs and we stop doing things because we are supposedly satisfied with the fact that we got something. And then another thing,
I really don't think that's why people stop protesting. I just think we get to a point of protest where a lot of people are no one's really, I feel like Black people as a whole, we never move as one. So it's like people are out there for different reasons. So then once certain reasons are just really not really pressing for people. So it's just like at this point, we get tired of it. Like some people are like, you can only be angry for so long. So once the anger passes, it's like, all right, cool.
Now what?
Yeah, it's like, where does that energy go? Like, you want it to ultimately like transfer into some sort of into action, into terms of more organized action. But again, what does that look like? I think we still have this kind of old school playbook that we kind of inherited from the civil rights era, where those folks were just protesting for days and years and years and years. You see how long it took for that movement to kind of end in some sort of substantive change. I think it was like 8 or 9 years, and even then they still didn't do everything that they set out to do. But I think that's hard now, because I think we kind of have a microwave society. So if you're not able to get something done instantly within like a few weeks or a month, people are going to move on. There are too many distractions right now.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when we certainly, like, I agree, we certainly should be continuing to protest and continue to kind of putting our energy behind demanding more. But, people have jobs, people have other things that they want to do with themselves. They don't want to be angry all the time.
We're also going through a global pandemic, so it's not necessarily like safe for everyone to protest. Like some people have health concerns that are like, oh, or whatever. Not even that's an important thing. I think a lot of people are just going through a lot. You have different things that may go on in your life or different obligations that you have. And as much as you might want to be on the front lines, you may have to kind of like accept that's not really where you can be. I also feel like in revolutions or things like this where the country's like so divided, I also think that everybody has different roles. Like you have people who protest, you have people who are like in positions where maybe they can do something about it, like maybe in law enforcement or maybe they work for like a district attorney's office or stuff. So I don't think it's necessarily like everyone has to be a protester, but I do think that this outrage should just keep growing if the situation keeps getting worse. I don't think you should be any quieter. I don't think you should protest any less. I don't think you should be any less angry. And it's okay to be angry. I also think a lot of people feel like they can't be angry. Like you don't want to come off as angry. It's okay to be angry. I'm angry. It's frustrating when you see people that look like you get murdered in the street and no one is held accountable for it. It's kind of like, okay, well, pick up the body, the coroner's office picks up the body, and then it's like, okay, everyone goes home. These people get to go home to their families. Meanwhile, there's someone who doesn't get to go home from their family. So I understand why it has died down, but I also feel like we need to get back to it. Like it has something has to give.
Just what you said about revolutions, like I think Black people don't also have a leader. So I think one thing like with Obama, and I never put this on Obama, is I think a lot of people looked at Obama as being this leader for black causes, but he was never the leader for Black causes. He was the president of the United States. I think that's way different. I know like in the 2000s, like there's even like I mean, think what you want, but there's like we had people to point to, like there's Al Sharpton, there's Jesse Jackson. Like right now, like who's the guy right now? Because we all don't like Sean King.
Don't like DeRay.
DeRay, I don't know what he does. Malcolm Lamont Hill be sitting courtside at Sixers games. Like I don't know who the guy is. Like until
Amanda
there's a
Seals,
leader, there's no
Ice Cube. Like there's no.
And the thing is, all these people who call themselves the leaders be arguing amongst each other. So it's like you can't protest.
We have to stop putting people in position, because I think one of is for me, I was saying to somebody earlier, like as someone who's like been in I did my major in college was pre-law. I intend to go to law school, and that was a conversation that the Black pre-law students would always bring up, like where has all the leadership gone? Like our my grandparents had Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and all these different people, and again we don't. I feel like we're kind of substituting it with like Black celebrities, and that's not always the best course of action, because half the time they don't even know what they're talking about.
I mean, they also had celebrities too. Like I'll never forget, like Malcolm X has that interview, like playing what's his name, Dick Gregory, R.I.P.
Dick Gregory.
You don't look to comedians to push a movement. And I remember like they had beef for that, but it was just like now we're looking at. And the thing is, I feel bad for the celebrities, because those are the Black people who hang out with these white people who can really, talk to them. But at the end of the day, you're not like, you're spending all these hours even building a brand.
Why I also feel like picking celebrities is kind of like not the best course of action, is because celebrities are in somewhat detached from reality. They're very privileged, and a lot of people want to say, oh, like Black and privilege can't go in the same conversation, but that's not true. It's important for everyone to acknowledge their privilege in every situation. Like, I mean, I don't have no privilege, but if you're a man, you're
not privileged. You feel like, I feel like for sure, like even all of us right now to even have
that's true. Like in the sense that I'm more privileged than someone. I'm from the suburbs. I'm more privileged than someone who may come from like an urban community or like violent, whatever. But I think if as someone who makes over the $400,000 that we keep hearing about, yours everyday struggles are not the same as my everyday struggles. So the things that I'm particularly concerned about in this election, you may not be concerned about in this election, like, because you're far removed from reality. So I feel like sometimes we have to be mindful of that and pick people that understand what's going on and are willing to remove themselves from their pedestal to do the work that is required to kind of propel our people, our community into a better space.
One thing I'll say, just touching on that I just thought about when you're saying that, it's like, I think that's one thing that's different about Black people and white people. Like, Black people, we will be like, oh, like celebrities, we don't want to look towards these people to lead our movement. But like, poor white people love Donald Trump. They love homie in the 80s.
They love Ronald Reagan.
That's what I'm saying, homie in the 80s, Ronald Reagan. So it's like, they look at these people as the American dream. I think Black people are too smart and they realize this really isn't the American dream. They just got lucky. So I think that's where the line is different between Black people. And that probably has nothing to do with this, but I just thought that's kind of interesting.
I think it's actually interesting that you say that, because I think that's true. Like, I think, but I also feel like the things that, especially in this election, the things that are important in this election for Black people are not as important for white people. So I don't think.
So I have a question for you and probably everyone actually. Do you think, so one thing that I always say is white people can never vote against their interests, right? So it's just when you're voting, like for example, let's say like Democrats really came to be like really like to push a Black agenda. I always say, this is funny because it's a political podcast, but I always say like white people, they try to like, they'll give us a little bit, like they'll cut a little bit more of the pie each election. Like every 4 years, maybe Black people get a little bit more of the pie. But the thing is, once we get to the point where white people are like, damn, they have too much of the pie, they're voting against their own interests if we're pushing our agenda at the end of the day. And that's just something that I see, but I want to know if you guys felt the same way.
I'll take that a little bit. So if you talk to like a white person that follows politics and is well racist, the first thing they'll say is that Black people do not vote for Black issues. And the reason why I say that is because during the Democratic primaries, a lot of candidates actually had a very Black specific plans. I think like Mayor Buttigieg had like I forgot the name of his plan, but he had like a very Black specific plan. I think Bloomberg had one. I think Elizabeth Warren had one. But they all did poorly in South Carolina. So South Carolina had like a pretty high like Black electorate there. And they elected the guy, or they voted for the guy, Joe Biden, who didn't release a Black plan at all. His only thing was, I work for the Black guy and you guys know me. So until like our voting base actually like acknowledges the fact like, hey, we should be asking more from our Democratic Party, we're just gonna keep seeing more of the same, unfortunately.
I mean, but don't you think that's just like the nature of politics? Because white people also vote against their interests, because a lot of the middle of America voted for Trump, and Trump's not for their interests too.
So you just said white people didn't vote against their interests, though.
No. He asked if white people can vote against their interests.
Can they?
Yeah.
I said something.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, I said something last week about what was I talking about? White women, and how I've noticed a trend in like how white women vote. I think with Black people, we're not really afforded the luxury of kind of like seesawing between like who we want to vote for. We kind of have to always choose like the lesser of two evils. Like it's kind of like we have to go with who we feel like is going to give us as close as what we're looking for, even if that means that that's nothing at all, honestly. And I feel like white people really could care less. Like I think you will find that most white people now are voting for Trump, not because of any like political thing, but just simply because he allows them to just be as racist as they want to be.
And also just even tying into that, because I know I like work with white people who voted for Trump. I think white people and Black people both don't believe in the system, and Trump for white people is them not believing in the system. So they're voting for him simply because they don't believe in the system, and that's they don't believe in the system, guys. Like if Diddy ran and Black people actually believed in Diddy, and they were like, oh, well, Diddy's so different than Barack and Biden and these guys. That's how they look at Trump.
Yeah, he's not a politician. That's literally
why he's the perfect guy to go against Hillary.
I mean, to be fair, when Barack Obama ran, he was the outsider, quote unquote, even though he was a senator for a few years. Like it's usually what happens is it's someone who's outside of Washington who can kind of come in and kind of shake things up. You can even go back to, I think, Jimmy Carter wasn't a creature of Washington. He was kind of an outsider coming into reform. Ronald Reagan, same thing, governor of California, former movie star who came in, who's going to change things up. Even George Bush, he was, CIA, but he was, someone who wasn't a politician. Like again and again, you see people come in.
Bill Clinton too. So
Bill Clinton, also from our governor of Arkansas. So it's always, we kind of do turn to people who are kind of outside of the Washington system, because again, the way that Washington looks at the world doesn't really reflect the way that I think the rest of the world sees the rest of the world, or sees Washington, or whatever. I think the views are kind of they just don't mesh for whatever reason. But I do think, Carla, you said something interesting about white women privilege. There's a clip going on around Twitter about a woman there's, I guess, a focus group of women on Vice, and a woman was explaining why she voted for Trump. And I guess the answer that she gave was something to the effect of, she voted for him not really thinking of it. She was actually a Biden supporter, but she just voted for Trump because it was a joke to her. It didn't really matter. And surrounding her, it was wild, because around her, it's, there's, a bunch of women of color, Latino women, Black women, Asian women, who are kind of just sitting there looking at her crazy, because she's kind of explaining like, oh, it didn't really mean anything to her. She didn't think he was going to win. It was just a joke. And then there's a lot of privilege that comes with that position. And I think that's kind of one of the things, getting back to Dwayne's question, can white people vote against their interest? I think they do have the privilege to know that, worst come to worst, they're going to be okay. So they can vote against their interest. They can vote against their interest whenever they can.
I have drove past some of the most raggedy homes I have ever seen in my life with Trump stickers. I mean, Trump signs in the front and all these things and flags and stuff. And you
been to Florida?
I'm like
Jersey too, man.
I'm like, and I was talking to one of my old professors about this the other day, and I was like, it's funny to me because, Trump is talking about taking away your health care. He's talking about, not really giving you any support to get out of these situations that you're in, the circumstances that you're in. He's not really trying to help you provide any better for your family. He's not really trying to do anything for you, because you are a part of this quote unquote class that Trump chooses to ignore. He doesn't care about it. And it's funny to me because everyone is always saying how, a lot of white women are now saying how they're outraged about what the last 4 years have looked like, and they're disgusted and they feel horrible because they voted for this man believing that this was going to be. And it's funny to me because Trump has done everything he said he was going to do. So
he's done Obamacare. He's done a lot.
It's the privilege that allows you to kind of just be like, I made a bad decision 4 years ago. I voted for the wrong person, and I'm sad to see what this has turned into.
So that's exactly just to touch on just what you said about like the raggedy homes thing. Like that's literally what I was saying, where it was like Trump is the American dream for poor white people. Like that's why I try to compare it to like Diddy and like Jay-Z. Like if I'm this kid from, the middle of the country, and it's like all these presidents have come, like Trump is a white guy. I mean, he did get his $1 million loan from his dad, but Trump he's not from one of these great American families. Like you see his name on all these buildings and you're like, yo, I want to be that guy. So that's such an easy sell to middle America. That's why this guy is like evil genius, because he's selling to those people, but at the end of the day, he's really only helping rich people. So it's like he's helping the rich people, but then he's also getting the vote from that poor. It's like a sick manipulation, but
so I'll just like add my little 2 cents here. So I was like listening to like the New York Times Daily podcast, and they were talking about like these white women in suburban neighborhoods, because whoever is going to win the election has to dominate the suburbs, unfortunately. And to Kali's point, like these white women are just like, they're only concerned with just how unpresidential Trump acted. It wasn't really much of his policies. It wasn't really anything like that. It was just like how unprofessional he acted while in office, and how like they were fearful how like that would like translate to their kids growing up. And I'm like,
they're idiots. Sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. That's just so dumb. Like you knew. What did you think back in 2016 when this dude was acting crazy in debates that he was going to be good? Everything was going to be all chill when he got into office? Get the fuck out of here. You thought he was going to be a nice guy once he got into office? Come on.
You still had words on enough, Marcus. But I do want to move on because, like, Dwayne and I, we do have ties in Philadelphia, so I do want to talk about this one case. So right now, ongoing in Philadelphia, The people are protesting in the streets. I don't know if I want to call them riots or not, but people are protesting in Philadelphia. The reason why is because Walter Wallace Jr., he was gunned down by two Philadelphia police officers. They shot him 14 times.
Caught on video again, too, which is nuts.
And I tell myself, like, I'm not going to click on the video because I can't see another person that looks like me just selflessly gunned down by two white cops, right?
Yeah, I clicked on that shit without knowing what was about to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if it's like justified or not, it's just it's really hurtful to see it because they're just so used to seeing it again and again and again and again.
I think as someone who has an older brother, I have an older brother, and I think just in general, I worry about my brother a lot more than I used to. And my brother is like, he's not your typical, but it's like, it's not even about the way a person is, because that doesn't give anybody the right. But, a lot of people think if you're complicit, if you comply, if you show your hands, if you follow instructions, if you do all these things, you get to go home. But we have seen that is not the case at all. This man who suffered from mental health issues, which is a very prevalent problem in the Black community. But his mom was there, it's advocating for him, like, please don't. And this man had a knife. I feel like we have to start talking about what are the de-escalation tactics that are being learned at the police academy, and why do you just choose not to use them? This whole situation could have been 100% avoidable, like most situations. He wasn't doing anything. He was, there was so many different things. You could have tased him, you could have tackled him, you could have,
They didn't have tasers though. The cops didn't have tasers on them.
Don't have the tools you need, so it's like you only have a gun. So if you're needing to defend yourself, that's your only option. I just feel like I'm getting kind of, as sad as I get very emotional about this, but it's like I get kind of numb because I feel like a part of my daily morning routine is waking up, I check the news about COVID and everything else, especially everything going on with this election. I'm more into the news than I am now. But it almost appears as being Black in America is kind of like just having to accept that when you wake up in the morning and you check the news, you're gonna see someone is gone. You're gonna see that someone that looks like you is dead. And I just feel like it's very hurtful because you kind of wonder what can be done about it, and you kind of feel like nothing because it keeps happening. And like Marcus said, on video, it's like there's no accountability. It used to be like, damn, how much did this stuff happen that we don't know about? And then video came out, and then it's like, okay, we see it on video, and that doesn't matter. George Floyd was on video.
Obvious guys are on video. They never held accountable for it. You would think video was supposed to be the equalizer. Like, okay, we have all this tape on video. Like, I don't think we caught glimpses of Trayvon Martin on video. Like, there was an aftermath of video, but we saw what's his name, the Tamir Rice in Cleveland get shot by a cop, and was like, this kind of proves that if a kid that age can get killed for no reason, not in this kill, or not be held accountable, what hope is there for any of us, for any adult?
And that's just the oh, you got it, Carly.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's especially when you see other videos of white men causing a ruckus, causing havoc,
running around with guns and weapons and attacking the police, and all they do is de-escalate.
Being a threat to
it's how they value Black lives, though. So it just really comes down to that. And that's
what
honestly,
it is. That's
one thing about that video. I know Carly saw it, but the cops were afraid. They were afraid for their lives.
They were terrified of them.
They were terrified. It's like, yo, don't put these people in West Philadelphia. And the thing is, when I found out where it is, because Gus lives right by there, because he said in the group chat, I know exactly where Gus lives. That's not even the hood. So it's like, why are you even afraid over here? I understand it's a black neighborhood, but you're not even the hood. So first off, one thing I've noticed with the history of all these cases, it's about how the cops are being taught. So the cops are taught to shoot during these situations. And the fact that they even shot as many shots as they shot, they could have shot him one time in the leg, he would have fell. So it's like you were shooting to kill. You weren't shooting to put them down. Like that's first off. And as someone I've dealt with cops so many different times in my life. From like, it's funny because Carly brought up her brother, and I've even been around situations where Ty was with me, and like I put him in situations where the cops was there because me and Ty are different people. Like, so it's like I just remember being young, and it's just like, you know, I'm happy to be alive because I've been in some situations where it's like this could have been bad. I could have been in jail. Even recently, I actually just got my license back. I was profiled because I was black, driving to BMW. Like, there's so many different things that it's just how the cops are taught.
Yeah, and even picking up on that, like on the training on what they're being taught, like that's kind of like in trying to figure out like where we go from here. I don't know if we want to move on to that point, but it's like that's one of the things when we talk about reforming the police, like we have to look at the way like you're sending in people that are trained to like not de-escalate, but to kind of like maim these people and kill these people. Like there needs to be more training focused on de-escalating situations. And two, you need to have people that can go into these areas and aren't afraid and aren't fearful and acting from a place of fear, but acting more from a place of understanding. Like we need to like. Again, July, you said that this neighborhood, you know, it's not bad. If cops are going into areas like this and they're already acting like, oh man, this is not where I want to be. I need to be on my toes. I need to be ready to, you know, to fight or to shoot. You're already operating from a place of, you know, where something bad is going to happen. Like we need to have people that are either cool under fire, that are mentally prepared to go into these situations and, you know what they're doing, rather than going into these places where they're, you know, where they want to just take out, you know, whoever's coming at them and not even see them as humans. Like that's a scary thing that we have to kind of like confront and then look to reform. And if it means, you know, tearing up, you know, training manuals across police stations across the country, we need to like really look into that. And then I think, you know, whoever comes out and argues for reform, that needs to be one of the tenets. Like we need to make sure that we have the right people, the best people that we can get for these for these police jobs, not just people that are just willing to do it who don't know what they're doing.
All right, so that sounds nice. So one thing first, I think Lincoln University just came out with a police academy. So shout out to Lincoln University. But like that all sounds nice, but at the end of the day,
University, by the way, like the Pennsylvania one.
Yeah, the Pennsylvania one. Yeah, the HBCU. So again, that all sounds nice, but the key issue is accountability, right? Because like you can give these cops all the training in the world. If they can go into the neighborhood and shoot and kill like a black person, and they know that for a fact that like a grand jury is not going to indict them, a prosecutor is going to defend them, what difference does the amount of training makes really? It's all about accountability.
Prevention. Don't you want to? Don't we want to prevent this from happening again?
The reason why we're saying training is, we think that they're being trained to do that. So it's how they're being trained.
Okay, yeah. So there's two points, right? So like, yes, there has been like the training calls in the past where the city or the state or whoever trains the cops and like, you know, for sensitivity training. But like a lot of these police units have like an opt-out clause for these cops, which these police officers for training, they can opt out of the state or city sanctioned training and do their own personal training. And that's where in that own personal training, they get trained to like, you know, do violent stuff, go out there and kill people for their own self-defense. I'm saying, me personally, I think if we want real action now, like you have to give these guys accountability. Like, look, you do this, you're going to jail. And we have to like reform the law to like, in fact, accountability on that.
I think one of the biggest things about like law and even in like with, even when it comes to criminals, like, and when you're learning about criminal law, one of the biggest, they say the goals of our criminal justice system is supposed to be like deterrence, rehabilitation, and retribution or whatever. Deterrence is this theory that if you punish someone for doing something, other people will not do the same thing because they are now scared that they are going to get the same consequences as this person who has previously been punished. There's no deterrence in law enforcement nowadays because my partner just shot someone yesterday, killed them, and he's here with me doing his job.
Right.
So if I shoot this person, I'm gonna have a job tomorrow. Like, it's like I don't have to feel like I'm gonna lose my job because nobody has lost their job. So it's like the accountability comes because it's getting worse because the more we allow or the more these things go unpunished, untalked about, unsolved, just leaves kind of like a door open for other people to kind of feel like, and especially when it comes to Black people, like there has been this narrative in this country that Black lives are just disposable. They do not matter. Like that is why we say Black Lives Matter, because we have lived in a country that has perpetuated this theory that our lives are just valueless. And if we want to be honest, it's been that way since we arrived here. I feel like we are not valued, and therefore there's no punishment when someone does something to harm us, because I think the way I see it in the eye is it's like one less Black person we have to deal with. It's like, you're out of here.
You know what white people say if you say that to them, they'll be like, y'all don't even value each other. Like then they'll start bringing up the Black violence, crime. That's the shit that you get to be tight.
Same here, because like there is white violence.
Because we always use in the worst part about it is I usually hear Black on Black crime from other Black people. And white on white crime is not a thing. Hispanic on Hispanic is not a thing. Asian on Asian is not a thing, because crime is crime. It happens everywhere to anybody. It's only targeted towards us because it further perpetuates the stereotype that we're aggressive towards each other, we're violent, we have no self-control, and we do it to ourselves. So if you don't care about yourself, why should you do it to why should, if you don't care about each other, why should we care about you? And that's wrong. Like that's not a way of thinking, because it's situational. Like, do I agree with the high crime rates in certain places? No, but I also understand that there are, societal factors that contribute to these high crime rates that no one wants to talk about.
And one thing, just even to touch on that, and this probably has nothing to do with this conversation, is like I'm tired of like Black people looking at like being like the crime and being poor as Blackness. Like I feel like Black people have elevated so far past that. So it's just like I think Black people are the only people in the world that get judged by our lowest end. I don't want to say lowest end people, but we get judged by our criminals more than any other race. Like no one ever talks about Asian people,
our bad apples.
Asian poor people, or white
people.
Yeah.
White people are, statistically more violent than Black people. The poorest person, the poorest group, the group that uses these governmental assistance that quote unquote poor people use are white people. White people use welfare.
Look at the South.
And so this idea that we don't deserve respect, or we don't deserve justice because we're violent or we kill each other is just not true, because that doesn't apply in other situations. Like if a white man chooses to kill another white man today, it's just two white people that killed each other. It's
just two people.
No. One person is meant to disturb, first off.
It's just two people that have, that for some reason got into it, and then this is the outcome. I feel like it's only Black people where everything that we do is kind of like supposedly like this exclusive thing. Like it only exists in Black communities. Like, using welfare, doing drugs, selling drugs, owning guns unlawfully, like using guns unlawfully. That happens everywhere. And, it's even more frustrating when it comes from someone of color, or like, I don't like to say people of color, I like to say Black people, but it's more frustrating when it comes from your own, because it's like how ignorant and out of.
Why don't you like using people of color? Just curious.
I don't like to use the term people of color because it's not interchangeable. Like my experience as a Black person is not the same experience as someone else of color, like a Mexican person. We are the only people that experience what we experience at the rate in which we experience them.
Carly, how do you feel about Hispanics people's beef with this? Probably has nothing to do with what y'all saying, but Hispanic people have this beef with Black people. They have this beef with Black people. Even though Black people, whenever Black people do something that causes change in America, it helps all the other minorities. But I remember recently, I forgot what shorty I think she was on what's that show where the women are wearing orange in jail?
Orange is the New Black.
Orange is the New Black.
This Hispanic girl was mad because something happened in the Hispanic community. They were like, "Where are all the Black people talking about it?" It's just like, that's why y'all there to speak for your people, but Black people speak for every race. So I want to know, how do you feel about that?
Because I actually wrote in a paper my senior year of I think it was college, like or whatever, about how Black people kind of just have to be our own allies. We have to stop feeling like, with the exception, the only group I feel like we have to include in our stuff is the LGBT community, because there are Black LGBTQ members, so they cannot be excluded. But Black people have this thing where we feel like we have to be everyone's champion. Like, because we've experienced so much injustice, we cannot sit by and watch other injustices happen to other people, because we know what it feels like. I don't necessarily feel like we need to be everyone's Trojan horse. You know, everyone has to kind of, at this point, I feel like, stand on their own 2 feet. I'm not trying to like be divisive in anything, but it's like, how much do we have to show up for people and they don't show up for us, before we start to realize we're on our own here? Because it's like every time we do something for somebody else and we champion for somebody else, and then they say some off the wall racist shit, we're like, I can't believe they said that after all we did for them, after how much.
Can I ask one more question that's kind of like off base, just because Carly's on this lane?
Hey, you are the founder of What You Expect, so I cannot tell you no.
Carly, how do you
can fire me?
What a sycophant.
Feel about and y'all can actually chime in on this. How do you feel about so this is something I actually said to some of my friends who are like Haitian and Jamaican, but it's like African people felt like, I noticed this too, but it's like a lot of African people felt like, until recently, but like Marcus says, the EndSARS thing has been going on for over a month. But until recently, you started seeing people wrapped in the Nigerian flag, bleeding, getting killed, but nobody was really talking for it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, do you feel like all Black people should fight for each other too, or it's just like Black Americans or Black people who live in America should fight for Black American causes?
I will say, I think we do have to acknowledge that there is definitely a divide amongst Black Americans, Africans, even true African Americans, Caribbeans. There's definitely a divide, only because we have different cultural experiences. You know, like African people are more in tune with their roots. We're very displaced. Caribbean people have their own unique culture. I think we have to stop being divided, though, because at the end of the day, we're still all Black people. And I say this all the time. Black people in America, whether you're Jamaican, Trinidadian, African, whether that's Nigerian, whatever, Black people in America have the same enemy, and that is systemic racism and oppression. And being that we all experience it, I don't really see how where we come from or where we were dropped off at really makes the difference in how we show up for each other. You know, like on paper, we all Black, you know, and we all share similar, you know, like, what's the word? We all come from similar origins, and I don't think it matters like where our culture comes from. I think it matters that we are all Black and we have a responsibility as Black people.
I'm saying like, yeah. So when I said Black American, I meant all Black people that live in America.
Oh,
okay. Do we only like should we only be worried about like
that live in this country?
Like if something happened in Jamaica, whether you're African American, Trinidadian, like should we all as Black people feel the same way about what happened in Jamaica that happened to George Floyd? Like, do you feel that responsibility?
I do. I feel, honestly, I'm really torn on 2 things, because in the same sense, I feel like America has to stop trying to like tell other countries what to do, because it's like we're not even doing what we need to do. But at the same time, it's like wrong is wrong. And that's the type of person I am. Like, wrong is wrong. Like, the shit that's going on in Nigeria is not okay. Like, it doesn't matter where it's going on. Like, it's not okay for people to just die for no reason. And I feel that way about anyone. But I also feel like I'm a little irritated because I get tired of like no one having our back, but we show up for everybody. I mean, like, I gave up on that a long time ago. But I think it is important for us to recognize injustices in other countries, especially ones that deal with like Black people. And we should speak about it, and we should talk about it, and we should care about it. And definitely like at least acknowledge that it's happening. I don't think it matters if you're African or if you're Black. I think if you see something happening to other Black people, whether it's here, Europe, Asia, whatever, then you should feel some type of way about it.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I would like to feel that like any injustice to Black people anywhere is, is kind of in other countries is kind of the same here. Like we should be standing in solidarity and supporting, people in Nigeria or wherever there's kind of, Black people suffering. We should be standing aside on the side of them. At the same time, like I will be honest, when the SARS news broke, I think a few weeks ago, I was kind of like, oh man, that just sounds like, the same old stuff that's been going on. I'm not really going to kind of dive into kind of hearing about this because it's kind of lingered. I've kind of taken more of an interest, but like usually my natural response to this things is like, oh, that sounds like a problem for that country. It doesn't really, it's not like a problem here.
Yeah, that was my main.
Yeah.
And I feel bad about that because I don't want to feel that way, but if it's something going on here, it's a lot easier, I think, to kind of feel a certain type of way and feel that you can, kind of stand with those people or try to support those people. Whereas when it's another country, it's like, I don't know if I have the right to kind of stand up for them. And it seems crazy, especially after like seeing all of the Black Lives Matter protests that we're seeing in other parts of the world. Like even in England and France, we've seen like a lot of people kind of take up that mantle for stuff that's happening to us here. And I think it'd be great if kind of adopt that same kind of mentality when things are happening, in Nigeria, in Jamaica, in Caribbean.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that because I noticed that, me being a Ghanaian American, where it was like I noticed a lot of my people, like my group chats, like my group chats with non Ghanaian or non-West African people, because I've like a chat where it's just like mostly people from West Africa. They've been talking about this shit. We never talked about it in any of my group chats until recently. You started seeing, some posts, Darian, shout out to Darian. He runs our social media shit. He started posting shit. But before that, like we weren't on it early, and those countries be riding for American Black people. So, or Black people in America, but that's also because they have family here. There's different ties, but I just think, I just wanted to know how y'all felt about that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add on top of what Daw's point. So like, again, like my family's from Barbados. So in the group chat too, like in the local news over there, like you're seeing the same thing. Like as soon as the Black Lives Matter protest started here, over in Barbados, it's just like we still have traces of colonialism here. We should just get rid of it. They ride so hard for Black Lives Matter here in the United States, but like you don't see the reciprocation back and forth there. But yeah, good point though, Marcus. I mean, yeah, that's a really good point. So let me just ask you guys this. So like here domestically, like what do we do, right? So what do? We had like a long conversation about like police brutality. We had a long conversation about like.
You sure we have time for that? Because you don't want me to get my Dr. Umar cap on. You're not ready for that. We might need a podcast dedicated for the plan.
As I said, Dwa, that you are the president of what you expect. I'm not going to stop you in any way or sense like that. But anyways, like, so I wanted to talk about this. So there's actually a new Black militia that's been protesting around the country. They are called NFAC, so Not Fucking Around Coalition. So like they're, again, my question is, it seems like they're like the return to Black Panthers. So my question to all three of you guys is, do you guys support more Black militias?
No.
Yes. No. I do.
I do. But let me tell you why I'm gonna say no, because and this just ties into what I said in the beginning. We can't move separately. Like we have all these different groups. Like, and this is the thing. Like, yes, it's good to have a militia, but I think what needs to happen is once again, first we need to identify who the leaders are. Like we need to start, we need to have a Black people vote. Like, how we vote for like the president. Like I think like we need to take the Black population and we have a vote. Like who's going to be the Black president? And then from there we start building. You said what?
Like our own
Black election. Like it doesn't have anything to do with politics, but the thing is, when you have this Black militia, let's say this Black militia doesn't agree with something that's going on over, this is what happens in Africa actually. So in Africa, like remember, West Africa is probably the size of half of like, let's say the East Coast. Like Ghana's like the size of the DMV. So right. Like you got to think about it this way. Like if Ghana let's say Ghana goes to war with Mali, that's like New York going to war with North Carolina. So it's like when you have all these different Black militias, like you can still have different Black agendas.
I think for me, I definitely am in support of it, but I kind of have to, I agree. I think there has to be organization. I was actually just saying, like, the other day, I was talking about how, like, like, it comes full circle, but like how Kim Kardashian has almost like turned herself into like this criminal justice reform person, but she's kind of done it on the backs of like actual Black women who are lawyers and stuff like that. And I
That is her
think,
business model, yeah.
yeah, like I think, I think the same. I feel the same way. I think it's important to actually have people that not only have a voice, but I think if we're going to use our celebrities in our community as leaders, I think it's important for them to do it so in a way that is actually in communication with people who have studied this, who have spent years doing these type of things, who have a kind of an idea of how Black people need to move forward as like
and how white America works. Like, we don't know what this militia is.
we
Like,
have
for example, like the Bloods and Crips could be a militia. You know what I'm
They
saying?
could.
Yes.
Like if you know
Yes,
about the
they could.
foundation of Bloods and Crips, like white people make it seem like this crazy thing, but at the end of the day, the Bloods and Crips are made to protect the Black community. Like that's their foundation. So
Yes.
they're technically a militia. So that's
But
what I'm saying.
I think if you see it that way, that's true, because and it's actually funny because like the Bloods and Crips get so much scrutiny. Meanwhile, white
Mafia, yeah.
gangs and stuff kind of
Like Hell's Angel, for example.
and yeah, like even you said what, Hell's Angels?
Yeah, that's like
Angels,
uh,
Aryan Brotherhood.
But I think when I think about what if we had a militia, it would definitely require a lot more organization and unity than ever before, because you have to understand not all Black people are outraged. And I said this again last week, not all Black people are outraged about what's going on. Like there are some Black people who are either for it or they're like, that's their business. They
And that's exactly, and what Carly just said is 100% right, because there's so many different Black people on different spectrums of being Black. So like there's poor Black people, there's rich Black people who went through the system, so they kind of believe in the system, like Daniel Cameron. Like we're all Black at the end of the day, which is why I say we need a Black election. I'm gonna start pushing for it. What you expect, Black 2021. And I think this will be I think honestly, we should work on this. Like we should start identifying Black people in different communities. Like it could be a big ass project where it's like, this is the guy in St. Louis. Like this is the guy who's really pushing for Black movement in St. Louis and Kansas and New York. Like once we can start identifying these people, it'll be easier to create this militia.
So my whole thing is like in some cities we should already have that in place. Like for example, like Philadelphia should be one, Atlanta should be one, like Memphis should be another. We're just
They
not.
probably do have principal militias.
No, I'm just saying like in terms of like electing like a leader, like Black people are the majority in those cities, and like the leader that they elected should be like that Black leader, and that's just not the case, unfortunately. So I
get what you're saying, because if you look at like Newark, it's like what's his name?
Baraka.
Yeah, so like Newark is that's like a clear city where like this is the guy. Black people voted this guy in.
Yeah,
like you know what I'm saying. So like I understand. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So I get it. My only fear is like like I don't think we're gonna like if we had like this Black election, quote unquote. I don't think we're gonna like the Black leader if that. We do have
other things.
I mean, we're gonna hate it at the end of the day because I don't think no one likes having a leader, but I think everything needs organization. So it's like
I agree.
It's like I'm not even saying this has anything to do with politics. Like, I mean, actually, it has something to do with politics, but I'm saying like
it's political in nature.
It's political at the end of the day in its nature. But the thing is, like, let's say we voted a Black president. Like that guy might not even be a person who's running for mayor or governor, but that's the guy who like we look to speak for certain causes, and that he has people that he works with, and there's levels to it. So, I know that sounds crazy.
Is that Kamala Harris now then?
No. I think what
white people voted in.
One of the biggest biggest takeaways for me with Obama is because from a majority of Obama's election, I didn't really pay too much attention to Obama because I didn't have to. I was really young. I was in the 6th grade when Obama became president.
I'll say you was young as hell because I couldn't.
You're young as hell. Get out of here.
I couldn't even vote for Trump. Obama the first.
I was in the 6th grade, and I remember when Obama ran for president, I didn't really know anything about politics or anything. I hadn't even at that point taken a civics class. And I just remember like learning more about what it meant to be like, I remember getting into college and taking more law classes and more political science classes and stuff. And I realized how politics work. And I realized that Obama was nothing that Black people thought he was going to be, nor did he ever intend to be. I think Black people, and most Black people, if you poll them today, who voted for Obama, will tell you that they voted for Obama because he was Black. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with
100%.
I don't think there's anything.
But what if they say like people are like, yeah, I voted for Trump because he's white, like.
Yeah, but I don't.
That's right.
But I also feel like Black people never got that experience before. We never got the opportunity to vote for a Black president. So as soon as we saw like this man,
are you satisfied with what Obama did as president? This has once again, I don't know. This is a talking point, so you can be
Kev's, we lost control of the ship. It's all good. We're just rocking now.
We'll put timestamps.
Am I satisfied with? It's funny because it's funny you asked me that question because I was just having a conversation.
Once you go to, it's funny. That's funny. That's a nah.
That's a good question.
Not to cut you off, but yeah, that's a clear no.
Ask me that question because I was just saying to someone that I've kind of been able to, for most of my life, skate by elections without really caring because they didn't affect me as a child. I was a child. But I think when I realized like who Obama was, I'm not satisfied with it, but I'm not satisfied with it. I'm not satisfied because again, I don't feel like I was in a position to be affected by his policies or anything because I was really young. But at the same time, I think Obama was a president. He was a president. Presidents.
They swag surfed in the White House.
But even then, it's funny because I was talking to somebody and she was saying that she doesn't respect a white girl. She doesn't respect the presidency because the president gets to do a lot of like horrible things, and that's just something that is expected of the president. And I agree. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I feel like Black people had and they have this unrealistic view on democracy and the president, like being what it means to be the president, like politics. Like I feel like a lot of Black people don't understand that you are not going to like the president because most presidents don't do what we need them to do. They're not our presidents. Obama was not Black America's president. He was the United States of America's president. And I think a lot of Black people thought Obama.
This whole conversation is coming in a circle because this is how we started this conversation.
I think a lot of Black people expected Obama to get in office and just be like, yeah, it's time we take care of the Black people. And I just don't like that. That doesn't work. Like it doesn't work because one, Congress is not going to let him do that. Nobody was going to let him do that. And I think Obama, he couldn't do that. And I just feel like I feel the same way. Honestly, the answer to your question, I feel the same way about Obama as I do every other president. He is just a political figure that is an employee of, the United States government.
So I have a question for you right after you stop talking.
He's just a person that is expected to do a job, and he has to get approval from another group of people, that doesn't really care about Black America. So I just really didn't understand how Black people Obama was going to.
This is the hard hitting question. This is for all y'all, especially the two. I don't know if you guys can see it on the left, but this is also Marcus and Kev, because being that I've been able to, I've been afforded a lot of privileges where I have a decent job. I'm able to hang around Black people and white people. Like I've been afforded certain things. But what you just said, if I'm a Black person who isn't afforded what I'm afforded, I have no reason to go to the polls November 3rd. Like what you just said is Black people have no hope at the end of the day, because yes, if there's a president with a certain agenda, let's say like the Black agenda, let's say Biden really cares about the Black agenda. If the House don't care about the Black agenda, or the next, whatever level it is, it's hard. Like, you know what I'm saying? And this is why Black people feel defeated with America's political system. And I know now we're going to have full circle and they'll tell you just go vote. Now you have to go take over a lower level to the next level. But now you're talking about years. Now you're talking about maybe this will help your grandkids. But it's just like a lot of people had the fetus, like, you know, people working 60 hours a week. I don't want to hear that in, you know, 50 years, maybe the Black agenda will be pushed. And this is why a lot of Black people, because we just saw 8 years of a Black president.
I also think when we start to accept politics for what they are, we will be in a better position. I think unfortunately
I think Black people did. That's why Black people.
But I think also Black people are kind of in a position where we are very reliant on certain policies to be put in place because we want change, and I think we think that the change is. I think the change is going to come from these changes in government and these changes in policies, and that's just not always the case. It's very unfortunate because I feel like you said, Black people have no motivation to vote. I'm saying be realistic in the sense that what you're asking for is probably not going to get answered because when has it ever?
Like, and the only reason why I asked that is because Black people have the most power in voting, because this is why the Democrats have been pushing for Black people to vote for them. And you're not Black if you're not Democrat, because they know if they don't have the Black vote, they're going to lose. Our vote is so powerful, but but we don't really matter in the end of the day. Like we might, you know, next 4 years be able to break some shit off. I know Kev's going to talk about this later, but you know, Trump's saying, oh, well, I did the most for Black people. So it's just like, yeah, Black people matter. And we matter for their voting to get them into the. We
matter in numbers. We definitely matter in numbers, but I don't think.
At the end of the day, we don't really matter to.
Well, you don't matter. Black people don't. If you feel that you don't matter, it's because you lack, like, the engagement isn't there. I don't think, like, if you expect to just vote once every 4 years and shit's gonna just magically get taken care of, then you're gonna get what you deserve.
Yeah, 100% agree with Marcus.
But Marcus, I even spoke to that. I even said, like, all right, now you're gonna tell me to vote for lower level shit.
Yes, because
you have to. You have to.
We want to equate it to white people. Again, white people come out to every. If you want to know why the AARP is such a powerful lobby, why old people have their concerns kind of taken care of in every election by every political party and every group, it's because they're going out and voting all the time. If you're not engaged in the system, then you're not going to have what you want taken care of. Your voice is not going to be heard. You can't. Again, like, you can't expect anything from a system that you put nothing into, that you're not putting your voice in. If you're doing this,
exactly,
that's not what that's like. That's what y'all always end up like.
Oh, now it's y'all. No, it's the truth. Like, if you're not putting your voice in, you're going to find not getting anything.
Where have y'all seen a Black agenda work in America? Just when has it happened?
No one's put in a full-fledged Black agenda for over a long period of time. It always stops at, we're gonna vote for Obama in 2018, in 2008, but then in 2010.
So are you saying it's
right?
No, let me finish.
No, let him finish.
You're gonna vote for Obama in 2008. And on the pack, he's gonna do so much for Black people. But then in 2010, after he's just saved the economy, after he's just put in a whole the healthcare bill, he's working on these things, and then you're like, in 2010, I'm not gonna go out to the vote. I only did my bit in 2008. 2010, I can show.
But where are you getting that statement from? Because Black people voting.
No, because they're not voting. They're not voting
they're not voting.
That's the problem. You engage in 2008, 2012, and 2000, but you don't come out in the midterms. You don't come out every year. You're not engaged in the system all the time. If you're not engaged in the system all the time, you're not going to have your needs.
How are we going to get engaged in the system we don't believe?
You have to.
That's my fault.
You have to. No, you have to.
That's the thing. You have to reverse course. You can't just, if you believe it, again, if you don't believe in the system, then if you don't believe, it's kind of chicken and egg, right? What comes first? All right. If you don't believe in the system, then you're not going to vote. But if you don't believe if you're not going to vote, then of course you're not going to see anything from the system that makes you want to engage.
You guys being from Jersey, Kev's not from Jersey.
Thank God.
How do y'all feel about Newark?
What do you mean?
Like just politically, like
it's okay. Like, how I feel about Newark is I feel like Newark is a major city. It's a major city, and I feel like it is not
one of the few Black cities.
Absolutely, it has everything that other major cities have: an airport. There's businesses. There's stuff like this. There's
colleges, large sports arenas. Major businesses are based there. There's not that much difference. Like, I've been to Newark. Newark's not that much different from like places like, it's better than Cleveland. It's better than other like Rust Belt cities that have gone to shit.
It's better than Cleveland, Mark.
Again, I see Cleveland on ESPN all the time. Like, it's Paris of the
that better
United
be
States,
a clip,
right?
Man.
I see Cleveland all the time. All right, Cleveland is trash compared to Newark. All right,
But I think when you think
That's
about
not, yeah.
and you have to say, because somebody asked me like, why isn't, if you look at Jersey City, why isn't Newark where Jersey City is?
Well, that's gonna be my question, because Newark
is Jersey City nice though? Like when I went there, it's not
parts
that
of Jersey
nice.
City are very nice. Parts of Jersey City
nice
need a little work. It depends on the location, but yeah, there are parts of Jersey City that are very nice, and there are parts of Jersey City that you don't want to be at. After
yeah, like as soon as I get off the PATH subway, I'm like, oh, this is Jersey City. This is gross.
Yeah,
like
some parts.
Like my mom used to work right outside. Like when you first get off the PATH, like she used to work right across from the PATH station, like by that, like whatever, right by the water. And I think that area,
like Newport or Waterfront.
Yeah,
Newport.
That area right there has completely turned into like this, kind of like this place to go. Like they have restaurants, they have hotels, apartments, they're constantly building apartment buildings. And I think it's like Jersey City is starting to, or other places are starting to invest in Jersey City in the sense that they're bringing, like there's headquarters in Jersey City. Like my mom used to work investment management firm in Jersey City. So there's work in Jersey City, and I think Jersey City people are investing in Jersey City. Jersey City is changing. I don't think anybody is. I think people have kind of given up on Newark, and as unfortunate as it may seem, it seems like nobody wants to. Like honestly, do you want to live in Newark?
I think Newark has gotten better.
My sister's living in Newark.
Honestly, yeah.
There was a time, and I would not want to go to New York.
My cousin live in Newark in the Shack building, and that shit is nice as hell. Like
Newark is much nicer in the last. I'd say in the last decade, Newark has definitely come up.
I'm not talking about those. But every city has a good part and a bad part.
Newark used to not have that part. That's what so the reason. Actually, let me even ask you why I brought that back. I was actually trying to big up what you guys say. If you vote for the like the lower levels, a city can be built up if it's Black run, and then the Black agenda can be filled. Because I feel like Newark is the perfect example of a Black agenda being filled. Because I remember growing up, like when I left Jersey, what Newark, like even by Penn Station, like you still see the homeless people, but by Penn Station is crazy as hell. Like Prudential went up, like so much shit has gone up in that area. Shit is still going up. And it's a Black mayor, like his whole people are Black. So yes, what you guys are saying can work.
Like a question, or it's more of a point. When we ask these presidential elections, or I think a lot of Black, I know for me, my first experience voting was last election. That was my first experience voting, and I remember I was like, I didn't necessarily have
Obama's second term.
No.
Oh, sure.
So I voted for Hillary. Or did I vote for Bernie? I don't know. I think I voted for Hillary because I think at that point it was no point of voting for Bernie. And I remember just feeling like after I voted. Like voting is this thing that it's one of those things you look forward to as like your like a marker in the age that you turn. Like you turn 21, you're excited to drink. I think 18, I was excited to vote. I was like, this is my right. I've waited my whole life to do this. And I just remember walking out and just feeling like I didn't do anything. Like it didn't matter what I voted for. And I feel like a lot of Black people are discouraged because, like Marcus said, you vote every 4 years. You don't show up to, and this is not just Black people.
But that's the point. It's like now you gotta like, have you voted in between though? Like I know like I haven't. I voted in primaries because Kev made me. I've never voted for 2010. I ain't vote.
I think I have a bigger understanding of politics. I understand the importance of voting in these different elections because, you have people that are very upset about where they are, but they don't vote for their mayors, their governors, and those are the things that impact you just as much. If I argue that they impact you more than the presidential election because these are more localized.
Way more.
This is your everyday. Yeah, these are people that are affecting your day to day, much more so than they are at the federal level.
And I think Black people. I said earlier that Black people kind of have like not most Black people, because I'm one of them. Before I went to college, I had no idea what politics entailed. I had no idea what government entailed other than someone's a president, someone's a governor, someone's a mayor, and we elect these people. But we have like unrealistic expectations because we've been ignored all these years. And I think naturally after showing up to the polls for so many years, like for instance, imagine being imagine being in your 70s voting for this election. It's like, what the fuck am I voting for? I've been voting all my life for change. I've been voting all my life for someone to do the right thing. I've been voting for all my life for someone to show up for people that look like me. And what do I get? So I understand why people are discouraged from voting.
You know what's
but
funny about you bringing that up? My dad is 74 year old man, and he was saying like, as much as our generation be bitching, and this is why old people look at us crazy. Like they look at us as like, and you know how I always talk about how black people don't have no leaders and shit. Like those dudes who are in their 70s look at us like we're pussy because they feel like we have been afforded everything. Like we, you know what I'm saying? Like they were there when they like when my dad came into this country, like he saw civil rights. Like my dad came here 1960. I think he was young as hell. So it's like he came in the 60s and he's just like, yo, we take a lot of things for granted that he didn't get when he was young. And we probably do. But the thing is like, I think that's the reason why I'm bringing that up is because older people are a lot more conservative because they went through the system and they saw civil rights and they saw the movement. And we're like, I think they look at us like we're too radical and we complain too much. I don't know if y'all feel that way, but
I think that's fair. I actually think that's fair. That's a fair point.
Yeah.
I will also add like my 2 cents. Like older people are also voting for Social Security, Medicaid. I want to say is what they get, which are pretty socialist policies, but they still vote for it nonetheless. So they're also voting for that as well.
They vote for even the elderly. They say the older people have they're turning on Trump because they feel threatened by his, like he has this plan for like Social Security, like he's trying to cut Social Security. And for retired people, that is their income. Like that's like basically someone saying like, I'm gonna get rid of your paycheck. Like you're just not gonna get paid anymore. And because if you think about it, this is money that they have worked for. They've worked for this money. This is their money. And you're telling me that you're gonna take it away, and that's how I take care of myself in my retirement. That's scary. And that's why I say I don't understand people who are voting against their interests, because this is now not the time to do that. Like your things that you depend on are being threatened, and you're just okay with it going away because for the sake of what? Like what is the exchange?
I think you're underestimating the ability, the need for people to feel good about what they're voting for. It's like even if Trump is someone who's going to be like, you know what, I'm going to take away your Social Security, I'm going to threaten your health care. I think there is something to seeing someone get on TV. Those people are coming into our lands and they're taking all of our jobs, or those people are going to ruin the suburbs with their projects. And you can
use Obama for this too, like change. Like I'll never forget like being 17 and hearing Obama keep saying change. It's like, yeah, nigga, change. Like you're about to change. Like Obama was so good at like, him and Trump were just like, Biden does not motivate people to go to those polls. So I understand what you're saying.
He's not one of those people. Biden's very much, in a way, he's a conservative candidate just because like he's kind of like a return to the status quo.
He's a moderate Republican in my opinion.
Whereas Trump is this kind of again, he came on he was going to be a disruptor. That's what him and Steve Bannon said when they got into the White House. They were going to disrupt the administrative state of the country. That's what they've done. And if you're okay with that, then you don't mind that they're going to do things that are going to hurt your personal position, because it feels good. It feels good to be a part of a wave like that. It feels good to see someone out here who's just screaming at his top of his head at the White House and doing that for you. You'd rather be part of the wave sometimes than go with boring Biden, Sleepy Joe.
All right, so I personally, I absolutely hate it when Marcus and I agree so much during the podcast, because from our last podcast we did together on Faulty Hills, the Oath podcast, go check it out on YouTube. We disagreed heavily on the third parties debate. So to sit here and me agree with Marcus so much, it's just disgusting. So I want to bring up a topic that we're probably going to disagree on. So during the presidential debate, the last presidential debate, we didn't really talk about that because who cares about debates anymore. But Trump brought up a really good statement that I want to highlight. And he said that he's done the most for Black people outside of Lincoln. He gave Lincoln his credit. But outside of Lincoln, he's done the most for Black people. So my question to the entire virtual room here, which president has done the most for Black people?
Before y'all even get into that, can I just touch on why Trump said that though? So
go off.
A lot of reasons why Trump said that is shit that Obama did. So like black people unemployment was low. He started pushing for gentrification. So if you have bread, you can probably go rebuild your hood, but niggas don't have bread to do that. It was just like he touched on a lot of things that he did do. And the reason why I thought that was interesting was because after the debates, I was watching CNN and I completely understand why Trump hates CNN. Because right after the debates, because for example, I don't know if you guys talked about this on your last episode, but during the debates, I was like, yo, Trump was really chilling. Like, this is the first time I saw him being a president. And literally in the 4 years where I was just like, all right, he looks like he's trying to be political today.
You sound like Van Jones right now.
No, he was well behaved.
No, I'm really about to talk about Van Jones. So got on CNN, like all these people were like, it was like 5 screens and everyone was bashing Trump. Then they had the one like Republican guy just to kind of
former PA Senator Rick Santorum.
Yes, that guy. And then Van Jones was bashing him. He was bashing him. And then they gave Van Jones the screen. And Van Jones was like, all right, before I continue bashing him, let me list all the things Trump has done for black people. He's done all this, and this, and this. And I was like, wait, when did Trump do this? Because I've never heard, I thought he was like, it was just Trump's talking point. So Trump has done things for black people, but the only reason why I wanted to bring that up was if Trump really, like, because I really think Trump feels he's done the most for black people. If this is the level, this is the bar that for black people, then we need to reevaluate who we're voting for.
Oh, 100%. 100%. There's a very low bar for doing things, quote unquote, doing things for black people. And things that he pointed to, doing the First Step Act, opportunity zones, which funnily enough, that's
that's the gentrification shit I talked about.
Yeah. But the funny thing is that's something that's kind of there's been multiple reports saying that billionaires and real estate moguls are the ones making all the money off of those things that were supposed to create black jobs and create a new class of black entrepreneurs. None of that has happened. But he keeps pointing it out because again, it is technically funneling money into these neighborhoods, but the money is not going to those neighborhoods, if that makes any sense. Yep. But no, I mean, look, Trump's accomplishments are there. I think he has like 3 or 4 things that he's done. That investing in HBCUs is another one. He's done some things, but it's not. It's such a low bar though for him, not just him, but for all presidents. Like Barack Obama, you can point to him like he's accomplished some things, but again, they're not that great. And you can even go back to Bill Clinton, quote unquote, the first black president.
Oh God, no.
Again, not the record does not look that good.
It's a stigma, guys.
The record is just not there. I mean, you'd have to go back. If I'm trying to think who would be the best, the black president. Like if we can run it back and bring
it back.
I mean, I feel like I have to say LBJ.
Okay.
I have to say LBJ because I think that. But he basically handed the South, and he said this when he did it, he basically handed the South to the Republican Party in order to get voting rights and civil rights to African Americans. He made it and I do wonder what he could have done if he didn't stick around in Vietnam for so long. Because I think that's someone that if he is able to run for another term, I think that he could have, definitely expanded on what he did with the Great Society in terms of the welfare programs and expanding that to black people possibly. But we'll never know because Vietnam. But yeah, in terms of I think those 2 bills, those are massive bills that kind of expanded the franchise to black people when they didn't have it before. So that would be my choice. But again, we don't have any good choices, to be honest.
I think first of all, Trump is delusional, but we know that already. And second,
wait, before you go, Carly. So you don't think Trump is in the top 10? Because I feel like Trump has to be in the top 10.
Well, we have a lot of racist presidents, first off.
Or actually, Trump, I feel like Trump's in the top 5. So the reason why I just want to stop you before you say that is because I went and I started researching the most recent presidents. Trump has done more than all the presidents in my lifetime. So that's one thing I'll definitely stand for, even though I didn't vote for Trump.
I think if you're used to getting pennies and someone comes by and gives you a quarter, you're going to think that's a lot. Because you're used to getting nothing. Sure. So I think we measure things by how increasingly better they get, but not in the measure of like how important they actually are, how much they actually do for us. And I say Trump is delusional only because I give people the benefit of the doubt, but I think he's done like a lot more. I mean, I don't know. I feel like he's done things, you know, like the investments for HBCUs and stuff and whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I think we have a very small bowl to pick from. Like there's really, and it's funny because like I feel like all the presidents that Black people love so much have actually never done anything to them, or actually have done quite the opposite. They've done more harm than good. Like people love Bill Clinton because he cheated on his wife and played the saxophone.
Yeah.
And
That's,
you know,
It's a stigma.
but
yeah.
you know, Bill Clinton got rid of welfare as America knew it, and a lot of people don't know that. He was like, "We're just gonna get rid of it."
Is
Like,
he part of the super predator shit too?
Yes, him and Hillary Clinton stayed as super predators.
1994 crime bill is his bill, and I would argue if I had to, and again, I'm pulling from a very limited goal. My argument would be Lyndon B. Johnson because of the Voting Act and the Civil Rights Act. But at the same time, like I say about anything, a president can only do so much. I also feel like government and policies and politics are not always on the same, like they're not always up to date with society. So
No.
even if something, a policy is enacted, that doesn't necessarily mean that society is going to be an improvement of it and they're going to do what they say. So like I said Lyndon B. Johnson because he passed these bills that changed things for Black people, but it didn't really change because it just kind of got people to be a lot more discreet with their racism. You know, it was like, okay, we can't discriminate on people again, you know, based on race. Okay, so we'll find other ways to do it. And then that kind of contributed to where we are now, in the sense that like people get away with doing things to us if it's not like blatantly racist. Like if they can find another way to disguise it, then that's what they're going to do. And I feel like Trump has done exactly the same thing. Like he's, you know, he says racist shit, but he also says a lot of like innuendos and a lot of like, you know, like the stand back and stand by thing. Like that was like very like racist, but you know, I don't
public housing bit where he's like, "Oh, we're going to get rid of public housing in suburbs." Isn't that's like, how I'm going to win the white suburbs back?
Trump is literally like, it's funny to me because Trump is literally the result of what I'm talking about. You know, he is one of those people that are the direct aftermath of the Civil Rights Act, where it was like, okay, it's wrong and it's illegal to discriminate against people on the basis of race, but it
The Trump attack.
They took Carly out.
I was like, yo, I was looking at my phone. I was like, yo, to try to get us. Like, what the fuck?
They took Carly out. You hate to see.
All right. Yeah, edit point. All right. So since Carly is frozen, rest in peace, Carly. I'm gonna list the top five. So I think, Dwal, you're right. Trump is in the top five, which is kind of sad. But here's my top five. Number one is Ulysses S. Grant. Number two is LBJ. Number three is Abraham Lincoln. Number four is Barack Obama. Actually, Trump is not in top five. He's number six. And I think number five is actually George H.W. Bush.
You can find another way to do it.
How did you leave FDR off your list? I'm shocked.
Mm-hmm.
So FDR had a Black cabinet, but at the same time, he really discriminated against Black people, right? So he kind of did a whole like, I hear you, I see you, I understand you type of thing, but I'm not really gonna do anything for you people. For example, one of the biggest contributors to like the middle class movement right now is back in World War II when we had the GI Bill.
Yep.
The GI Bill was especially excluded from Black people. So Black people could not take advantage of this GI Bill. So I come from a military family. I cannot imagine that you send someone against their will, because they were drafted, to go to another country where they have more rights to fight for white people's rights, and they come back home and they still face like horrific discrimination, and they can't even get a GI Bill. And on top of that, even if they have money, they can't even live in the suburbs that the GI Bill kind of created. So I want to include FDR in there. Yes, he created the Black cabinet, but I don't think I think the Black cabinet is more so for show than anything else.
The symbolic gesture. Okay.
Yeah, just a symbolic gesture. The reason why I had George H.W. Bush in there as number five is just because I think it was more powerful than we kind of thought for him having Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice as like Secretary of State. I don't think that's ever happened before, like a black person that high up in the government cabinet before. And I think like you can argue that that party like gave certain white people to make them feel comfortable seeing a black person in power to go ahead and vote for President Barack Obama. And then lastly, like I would say, like UCS Grant has done the most for black people. So if you look at history and you see, for example, like Tim Scott. Tim Scott's like the first black senator since like the 1800s, or this black person is the first person for the 1800s. They're talking about the Ulysses S. Grant presidency. So what that means is like Ulysses S. Grant actually made the KKK illegal. He actually like fought for civil rights. He actually made it okay for black people to actually go out, vote, to actually go out and run for office and get into positions of power. So that little brief moment of history is where black people were actually like, they actually had civil rights. And then like, as soon as he left office, they took that all away. And we didn't get that back until like the 1960s when like LBJ came to power. So like, that's why I'm saying like UCS Grant, that's probably like number one for
since you're on history. I assume we're going to chop this episode up, but my question to you is, why do you think these white people did the, like, what was their political agenda to go against their people? Like Abe Freed, like everyone, like you talked about Ulysses Grant. Wasn't he a Confederate, by the way?
No, he
was Union General.
He was Union General. All right, my fault. I didn't start getting good grades to high school. What's it called? Like, what was the reasoning for it? Because I feel like something had to happen. Like, I don't think people were just like, I'm just trying to put myself in their position. It's just like, yo, I love black people so much, I need to go fight for them. Was it like something political, or that's just give us history lesson?
So for Lincoln, I know that he was more committed to preserving the Union. And that's why, you know, even in the build up to the Civil War, he was not willing to kind of stake out a claim on slavery. And it wasn't until after the fact that he was like, you know, this is kind of the only way that I can kind of bring the Union back together. That's kind of what pushed him to do the Emancipation Proclamation. Kev, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's for Lincoln, it was all about preserving and then kind of keeping the Union together. That's what motivated him on race. Now for Grant's, actually, Grant, I'm gonna let you go on Grant's motivations. I'm assuming that it has to. I mean, I'd like to think that it's some sort of belief in ideals, but I think you'll have a much better idea on why Grant was so committed to kind of extending the franchise to black people.
To be honest, that's actually something that I have to like look into and do a little bit more research on, because it is kind of surprising to me to see like a white person, especially in the 1800s, go so far out for black people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something that I have to research on and get back to you on. My educated guess is that it is somewhat political. There was this type of thing that the North was mightier than the South. And that kind of happened like throughout American history. I think the New York Times and Daily kind of touched on this a little bit, where like, for example, when they're pushing for desegregating schools, the North was like, oh yeah, you guys in the South, you have to do that. Yet New York City has the most segregated school system in the entire nation, you know, type of things.
If you recall, like I think one of the biggest fights with like when it came to desegregation were in places like Boston, where it was like we had women who are family members out advocating for separating the schools because they didn't want their children going to school with black children. They didn't want to have them. It was, I think, the shared busing mandates, the shared busing laws. That was a real big political debate, and that was something that was happening in the North. It wasn't a Southern thing. It was one of the things that kind of showed that racism isn't just a Southern franchise. It's something that goes, you know, throughout the country. So
Right.
it is interesting.
It's funny because like I remember my sociology teacher. I had a sociology professor sophomore year, and she's actually the reason I changed my major. I wanted to be a doctor at first. She said that sociology is not the study of society, but more so the study of racism, because that is the social makeup of America. America is racist. You know, we've been a race, like from the beginning of time. This country has not had black people's best interest, because when this country was founded, we weren't even considered people. And I think we keep expecting so much from a country that never cared about us. And I think that's the frustrating part, is you kind of get to like this place of acceptance, like it was never meant for us. We're not protected, we're not valued. And so I feel like it's kind of hard to say what people what someone could do for Black America when literally nobody has done anything for Black America. Like, I think Black America has always been responsible. We're really the only community in this country who is responsible for our own growth, our own progress. You know, everybody else gets so much help. So many, help and programs and initiatives that kind of propel them into like a better place. Except us, it's kind of like, oh, well, you guys are in a tough place. Well, why are you in a tough place? Think about why you're in a tough place and get yourself out of the tough place. And that's really how I feel about it. And that's how I kind of been looking at it, especially like in my adult years. It's like, damn, like, everywhere you turn, it's an issue, whether it's, healthcare, medicine, or it's education, or it's housing, or it's government, whatever the case may be. I think it's like everyone's big focus is, what is this president going to do? What is either candidate going to do for Black America? And I'm more inclined to believe that they're going to do what everyone else has done, and that's absolutely nothing. But I realized that in this election, I didn't really have the luxury of, nor did I ever really have the luxury of waiting around or believing. I see what someone has done in the last 4 years, and I don't really have a choice. I don't have the option as a Black person to be like, well, maybe Trump will get it right, because he did it when he had the chance. So I guess my answer would be nobody. And I think we're just fishing for an answer, but the answer is really nobody. There has never been anybody. Like, we're sitting here like, oh, this person did this little thing and this person did this little thing, but we don't need any more little things. We need big changes. We need something that's centered on us, because I feel like we're kind of the forgotten people. I even hear people talk about Obama, like, oh, Obama helped out gay people, but he didn't help out Black people. And it's like, well, I feel like that's different because there's gay Black people, but nobody has ever really specifically helped Black people from all walks of life: Black women, Black men, gay Black people, disabled Black people with mental health. I think we're just completely forgotten in terms of politics and government and this election specifically.
You're on mute, Kev.
So my professors do that all the time. I hate that. All right. So I have nothing else to say against that, Carl. I think you kind of touched on like a really good point there. I mean, you're right. I was going to shoot Obama some bail, but I was thinking about it, like, what did he do most was just like he did try to push criminal justice reform towards his end, but that's not all Black issues right there.
No,
so I will say,
everything that he did, not to cut you off, everything that he did was kind of Black people may have benefited from it, but it wasn't with Black people in mind, I don't think. The exception of maybe, I think he did something. I know he did something with criminal justice in terms of the way that I guess people that have drug crimes, I guess their sentencing could get released or get reduced, I should say. And he also kind of expanded the civil rights division of the Justice Department. But in terms of anything big, like you look at his big accomplishments, I don't think, his top 5, top 10, those would be Black issues that he touched on. There were things that, again, may have benefited Black people. Like when you talk about, rescuing the economy, preserving the automotive industry, those are things that Black people may have benefited from, but they're not something that was like, oh, this is definitely going to benefit Black people specifically. And I think that's why he gets punished for that, which, is, I think it's unfortunate, but I understand where it comes from. I think it's good to see, like, just like white people like to see, or poor white people like to see Donald Trump up there fighting for them. It would have been nice to see Barack Obama up there fighting harder for us, and not just, doing things like singing Amazing Grace when, we're kind of in a traumatic situation or things like that. He did the feel good stuff, but it would have been nice to see some policy behind it as well.
All right, so guys, I hate to do this, but like we do have to wrap up. So this is a very good conversation between all three of you. Supreme Leader Dwa of What You Expect, thank you so much for joining us.
Make sure you follow at What You Expect, WYE, WY Expect, follow WY Expect, Loki R&B. I don't even know these fucking apps. Follow Loki R&B, follow What You Expect, follow Dwavo, because you already know. If you don't know, do your Googles.
And fellow patriots out there, he did forget to mention WYE Liberalish on Twitter. So make sure you follow WYE Liberalish on Twitter as well. So if you like the episode, tell your friends, tell your neighbor, tell your mom, tell your dad. Help us grow, help us get bigger. We just want to be a voice for Black people politically. And, that's all I got. And we're out.